Tonom is a detective who is scared that no girl will ever want him because he's invisible. However, when his blind coworker notices him and starts giving him attention, he falls for her and rizzes her up, so he can start a life with her. The story begins when Tonom arrives for work and is noticed by his blind subordinate, Yako. He asks her how she could tell it was him, and she says she can smell him, which makes Tonom start sniffing himself, thinking he stinks. However, Yako freaks out and tells him he doesn't stink, and she only sensed him because her senses are better than the average human. Tonom compliments her for this because he can't even detect his own scent, and he is grateful that someone else can sense him. To confirm this, he goes completely invisible and asks Yako to point out where he is. Yako listens closely to his footsteps and realizes he is at the door, and Tonom confirms this. Realizing she's the only one on the planet who can find him, his heart begins to race, so he asks her to join him for dinner that evening. Yako is shocked because she wasn't expecting to be asked out like that, but she agrees to join him. On the way, Tonom asks if she has any preferences or allergies, but she says she's cool with anything since she doesn't go out that often. Realizing she might not know any restaurants, Tonom offers to take her to a spot and begins leading her there. Along the way, Yako notices something off about him and assumes he doesn't have any restaurants in mind. She begins feeling bad because she's a blind workaholic who doesn't go out, but she snaps out of it when Tonom asks if she can sense something delicious. Yako admits she can and points to a restaurant. Tonom is glad because he's picked something that will suit her taste. Since it's his first time at this restaurant, Tonom goes with the house recommendation, and Yako likes it. She smiles as she remarks that it's her first time eating out with someone from work, but is stunned when she realizes she's actually on a date. She snaps out of it when Tonom gives her a piece of his meat to eat, but Tonom notices her mood and asks what's up. She says the outing feels like a date and she isn't sure what to think, so Tonom tells her it's a date. Seeing Yako's nervous face, Tonom walks up to her and places her hand on his heart so she can feel it racing and know that he gets nervous too. However, everyone in the restaurant starts looking at them like they're crazy. After they finish eating, Tonom asks for Yako's hand so he can lead her to the station, but she becomes shy because they'll look like a couple. Tonom tells her not to worry because YouTube can't demonetize this video even if he develops a plot with her on screen, but Yako tells him he doesn't need to go that far. She begins tweaking and opts to walk on her own using her stick, and Tonom realizes she's flustered by the last thing he said. Yako can already tell that he's grinning at her, which surprises him, though he promises never to hide his emotions from her. After that, he holds her hand and escorts her to the train station, but when she arrives home, she starts rolling around on her bed because her first date with him went well. The following day, Yako sits in the office thinking about the first time she met Tonom. Back then, he seemed so nice to her, and his voice was so soothing that she would wet the floor after hearing him. She also liked how elegantly he carried himself and wished they'd smashed, because no one would even notice, since his sausage was invisible. Currently, Yako dismisses the thought because she only went out with him once, but she wonders what he thinks of her. She also wonders what life is like for him because normal people can't see him, which makes her ask if he wishes she could see him. Tonom tells her he doesn't really care much about it because he is used to being invisible, but he is grateful that Yako is okay with feeling him instead. That afternoon, Yako bumps into Jirashi, her colleague, who saves her from falling to the ground. At the office, Yako bumps into Kikira, another colleague, who helps her to her table. While the others are working, Yako asks if they notice anything strange about her appearance, and Jirashi realizes she might be trying to impress someone. She compliments Yako's looks and claims she's a love coach in case she needs any advice on romance. Yako claims she's a good girl because she hasn't been getting enough vitamin D lately. All of a sudden, Tonom enters the office and asks to touch her hair, and Yako agrees, although the head pat makes her pickle start tingling. When Tonom is done, Jirashi is flustered because their boss is the guy Yako is simping for, so Yako turns red and dodges the conversation. After that, Yako joins Tonom to listen to clients, most of whom demand investigations into their cheating spouses and missing exes. The following day, Tonom heads out to follow up on a lead, and he turns fully invisible when the guy he is tailing turns back. As the guy walks away, Tonom remarks that life as an invisible man is great, but he eats those words the moment he runs into a kid who can't see him. In the meantime, Yako is in the office listening to an audiobook about how to make happy sounds in the bedroom. When Jirashi asks what she's listening to, she lies that it's a normal audiobook to avoid being called a plot addict. Jirashi finds the book cool but mentions that she can't really follow what's being said, which shocks Yako because Jirashi is a wolf. Jirashi explains she isn't great at hearing or sniffing stuff by default and can only do it when she's locked in. Yako says she knows because she's checked Jirashi's reports. She then asks Jirashi for help reading a receipt on her table and finds that Jirashi spent a lot of cash on McDonald's. Jirashi says she's on heat and that her appetite has gotten worse, so Yako smiles and tells her to get a man instead and stop spending company funds on food. Feeling embarrassed, Jirashi leaves, but not before showing Yako where her phone is. Later, Yako checks the time and realizes Tonome has been out for so long. A bit later, Tonome returns, but when Yako calls out to him, he ignores her, so Jirashi tells her no one's there. Kikira then notices blood stains on the floor and assumes Yako is hurt, but Yako denies being injured. Afterward, she figures the blood is from Tonome and heads to his office with a first aid kit to see what's up. When she arrives, Tonome scoffs because he can't fully hide himself whenever she's around, so he reveals that he ran into some trouble earlier. Before now, he had hosted a married goblin couple and proved that the husband was a serial cheat. The wife was pissed and threatened to air fry her husband's sacks for sleeping around, while the cheating goblin was upset that his wife sent a detective after him. When Tonome saw things getting out of control, he tried to calm them down but ended up getting hurt. Presently, Tonome narrates everything that happened to Yako, who feels bad for him, but Tonome tells her not to stress because he and his client are fine. He finds it weird that his blood ceases to be invisible when it leaves his body and reveals that his clients were shocked when they saw it. However, Yako is bothered because his injury looks deep, and he notices she's worried. While he dresses the wounds, he tells her the injuries aren't that bad and that it only looks worse because he bled more than expected. However, Yako is scared because if he bleeds too much, he might die, so she asks if there's anything she can do to help. Since she's persistent, Tonome tells her to help with the bandage, and then he reveals he snuck into the office so she wouldn't be worried about him. While he covers his wound, he mentions that he feels ticklish around the area and also reveals that he's naturally ticklish. When Yako asks if she can tickle him, Tonome refuses because it might lead to something else. After they are done, they leave the room and realize the other employees have closed for the day, so Tonome says he'll stay back and write a report. Yako feels bad because she's going home while Tonome will be working overtime, so she decides to order some supplies for him. She then suggests they take a break together when she's done with work, but Tonome decides to take the break now and complete his job later. At first, he makes her some tea to help her feel relaxed, and Yako enjoys it, saying that it tastes good. Deep down, she wants to go out on another date with Tonome, but is scared because she thinks the previous date was a one-time thing. She figures she could just ask him out herself and decides to shoot her shot, so Tonome smiles because he was just about to ask her to dinner. He says he found a place he wants to show her, so Yako agrees to pick a day for their next date. The following day, Tonome leads Yako to an elven restaurant to get a special tea combo. As they are presented with multiple tea blends to choose from, Yako becomes a bit confused and decides to go with the one Tonome gave her the day before, as she liked it. Karma, the bartender, reveals that he's the one behind the tea blend, and he recommended it for Tonome because he asked for a tea blend to make a girl happy. He teases Yako that Tonome will ask her out soon, but that's when his wife, Light, shows up and drags him away. While Yako awaits her order, she asks Tonome if he found this restaurant for her. She itches to know if he researched this place because of her, but she becomes shy because she's asking lots of questions. Tonome confirms her suspicions and compliments her intuition, but she claims she isn't smart because she doesn't know many things. One thing she'd like to know is what Tonome looks like, and she hates that she can only work with her imagination. Tonome notices and allows her to touch his hands, and she realizes his fingernails are well kept. Tonome says it's because of the ladies, and Yako understands because she doesn't like it sharp and rough. As Tonome holds her hand, she becomes flustered and starts thinking that he can see right through her. But before things can get interesting, Light shows up with their order and ruins their moment. That afternoon, Yako asks Jirashi about Tonom's fashion sense, so Jirashi mentions that Tonom wears a suit all the time. When Kikira asks Yako why she's asking, Yako says she wants to go shopping for herself. Jirashi pieces things together and figures she wants to go on a twin date with Tonom, so she gets fired up and offers to take Yako shopping. At the mall, Yako tries out different outfits, and all of them look good on her. All the while, Tonom is at the office, asking Kikira for restaurant recommendations, and he gets a dozen. The following day, Karma and his wife arrive at Tonom's office, and they complain that they've been watched of late while working in their restaurant. Light says hooded guys ask their neighbors about her, and she's found them taking pictures of the restaurant. Meanwhile, Karma's cheeks are red because he never thought he'd be cute enough to have a stalker. When Tonom curiously asks the couple if they were followed, Light says she lost her stalkers, so Tonom offers to look into their situation and come up with a solution. A while later, Kirika reports that he's traced one of the stalker's vehicles to a big pharma corp in the mountains, and that all the people in the car are dressed the same. Seeing this, Tonom figures the stalker situation is bigger than he expected, but just as he's about to ask Jirashi for intel, she reports that the stalkers have stopped in front of Light's shop. Currently, she's running away with Light and Karma as she barely made it out of the restaurant in time. After hearing this, Tonom dashes out of the office with Kikira, leaving Yako behind to handle things there. Not long after, Yako hears the doorbell go off, so she opens the door to see who's there. Unfortunately, it's one of Light's stalkers, but before he can do anything funny to Yako, Tonom arrives and chokeholds him. However, the dude begs for his life and reveals that he's Light's father, leaving everyone shocked. When Light returns, she confirms that the man is her father and that he runs a pharmaceutical company. Light's father apologizes for the trouble and explains that he only wanted to see how his daughter was doing. When Light questions why he came with their entire clan, he explains that they insisted on following him. Karma then cuts in and teases Light's father for being the clumsy type, but the dude side-eyes Karma, because he does not support Karma's relationship with Light. Later that evening, Tonom shares dinner with his employees because they've managed to resolve Light's case. While they are at it, Jirashi questions why Yako isn't drinking, so she says it'll be harder to get home if she's drunk. Jirashi then offers to walk her home if something like that happens, but about an hour later, Jirashi passes out from having too many drinks. After everyone is done eating, Tonom calls a taxi for Yako since it's already late and decides to take her home. On the way, Yako is flustered because she's thinking of a way to ask Tonom to join her for tea in her apartment. Just then, Tonom asks her out to another restaurant, which is usually dark with a pitch-black interior. He says he'd like to experience firsthand how Yako lives, so Yako smiles and promises to be his tour guide in the dark. Soon, the taxi gets to Yako's apartment, so Tonom drops her off and looks forward to seeing her tomorrow. As he is about to leave, Yako begs to share a cup of tea with him, but he refuses because the taxi is already waiting for him. However, he promises to stop by her place and make it up to her when he's free. A few days later, Tonom takes Yako out for a date at the pitch-black restaurant. After the lights go out, Yako starts teaching Tonom how to navigate their table and eat his food. However, when it's time to eat, Tonom excuses himself and heads to the shower because he's restless. As he freshens up and leaves, Yako sees him and asks if he'd like to leave the restaurant, and he admits it. On the way out, he apologizes for interrupting their date and promises to make it up to her for wasting his meal. However, Yako brushes it off as no big deal because she has already packed his food for him. All of a sudden, Tonom asks her to join him at his place for dinner, and it takes 3 seconds for her brain to process that. When they arrive, Tonom serves Yako a home-cooked meal, and she likes it. He then apologizes again for the restaurant thing and reveals that he's scared of the dark. A few years ago, he was at a camp with his mates, and there was a time his courage was tested. He and the other kids were told to hold a candle and walk up a mountain road, but along the way, his partner left him behind and he was all alone. As a result, he fell on his face and started bleeding, and even though he picked himself up and waited for someone to find him, no one did. Eventually, he gave up on waiting and managed to make it back to the cabins, but that was when he figured that no one knew he was gone. He was in tears as a result, and he realized this issue was because he was invisible. As Tonome narrates this in the present, Yako assures him that she could never ignore him because she knows how he sounds, smells, and moves, and she can also tell how he feels without looking at his face. She reveals that she would miss him if he left and wouldn't stop until she found him. Realizing what she just said, Tonome asks her to be his girlfriend, and the request throws the chick off. Deep down, she thinks Tonome might want to smash because that's what couples do, but Tonome says he's a gentleman and decides to hug her to make her feel comfortable. It's only been a week since Yako and Tonome started dating, and Yako wants to have more lovey-dovey moments with Tonome. She begins fantasizing about getting pinned and smashed, but calms down because she agreed to keep her urges and dating life separate from work. Just as she completes the day's work, Tonome takes her by surprise as he hugs her and asks her out on another date. The request melts Yako's heart and she agrees to the date, but not before tickling Tonome for ruining her lock-in phase. That evening, Tonome finishes up with work and asks to take Yako home. This makes Yako recall the last time he took her home, which was when he declined to have tea with her. Now, she wants Tonome to stay at her place for tea, so she joins him to the train station to get home fast. While on the train, she's flustered because Tonome will enter her room, but she calms down a bit when she recalls that her mom helped clean the place up a few days ago. All of a sudden, Tonome hugs her and asks if he can stay for tea, and Yako accepts immediately. A bit later, they arrive at her apartment, and Tonome makes himself feel comfortable. As he waits to be served, he notices Yako's silky garment on the floor and is tense because he's shy to tell Yako. He figures he'll stay quiet and pretend nothing is there, but that's when Yako walks by and steps on the silky garment. When asked what it is, Tonome claims it's a handkerchief, but one sniff of it makes Yako panic and hide it. After that, she serves Tonome a cup of tea and some cakes, and the dude likes it. After the meal, Tonome prepares to leave, but not before asking Yako to call him by his first name when they are in private. The thought of this makes Yako blush, and her floodgates start cooking when he calls her by her first name. Seeing her blush makes Tonome get the urge to kiss her, but he's hesitant because Yako is blind and he might ruin the timing of their kiss. With this in mind, Yako suggests they come up with a kissing signal, so Tonome scoffs and gives her a forehead kiss instead. The following week, Yako shows up at work and notices something different about Tonome's aura. When she asks what's up, Tonome reveals that he just got a new suit, and then proceeds to ask Jirashi if it looks good on him. Jirashi says she can't rate his looks because he's invisible, but the comment makes Yako realize that Tonome is a bit hurt by that. She wants to help, but can't because she doesn't know anything about clothes. However, Kikira compliments Tonome, saying that the suit slaps hard, and Jirashi feels the same way too. Feeling hyped, Tonome meets Yako and asks her to cop a feel of his suit, and when she does, she likes it. She even compliments him and asks if he likes fashion, but the dude says he only likes buying clothes, since it's the only way he can express himself. Watching from behind, Jirashi asks Tonome how he can make his clothes invisible, so Tonome explains that his body produces a chemical that makes him invisible, and he can extend the invisibility to his clothes. As he demonstrates this, Yako asks if he can make her invisible, so Tonome tries it by holding her hands, but it doesn't work. All the while, Yako is flustered because she just locked fingers with Tonome, and she wonders how fast his fingers are. When Jirashi mentions that Tonome's powers are pretty convenient, Tonome explains that full invisibility isn't legally allowed in public places and that he can only do it because he is a licensed investigator. Also, he kinda hates his powers because he can get run over by a car or bumped into by normal pedestrians walking on the street. After work, Yako stops by Light's tea shop with her mother to try out some tea. Yako's mother likes the place because it has a variety of tea flavors. Meanwhile, Light is wondering if Yako has told her mother about her relationship with Tonome. A few days ago, Light stopped by the office with her loser husband and offered everyone a tea treat to thank them for the help last week. As Tonome accepted the token, Karma started teasing Yako for dating her boss, so Light yelled at him to shut up and dragged him out of the office. Currently, Light figures Yako hasn't told her mother anything, and decides not to say anything about Tonome either. However, that's when Karma starts running his big mouth, but Light makes him shut up before Yako's mom finds out. Unfortunately, it's too late because the lady heard Karma snitch, and now she looks forward to meeting Tonome in person. Later at work, Jirashi and Kikira notice Tonome and Yako trying to avoid calling their first names. Both colleagues try their best to stay out of it, but Kikira gets fed up and tells the couple to stop pretending because it's already obvious that they're dating. After he says this, Jirashi attacks him because they originally agreed to mind their business. Meanwhile, Yako is shy that she's been had. A little later, a lawyer named Matter walks in and meets Tonome concerning a case he's been working on. He begs Tonome to get some information that will help with a recent court case, so Tonome agrees. As their meeting ends, Matter notices Tonome's suit and compliments him on it, and then leaves the building. Meanwhile, at night, Matter goes home to Kikira, and it turns out they are gay brothers. While they talk, Matter pushes for Kikira to make their relationship public at work, so the dude finally agrees. The following day, Kikira introduces Matter as his boyfriend, and Jirashi is shocked because she doesn't know why Matter finds Kikira attractive. Matter blushes and says he's been a thing with Kikira since high school, but before he can get into the bromance details, Kikira side-eyes him and threatens to be the top tonight. The following week, Yako is down with a bad cold, so Tonome calls and asks to visit. She agrees instantly, but after the call she realizes her mom is around and is shocked, but calms down when she notices that her mom isn't in the room. Not long after, Tonome arrives, and Yako invites him in. He then heads to the kitchen to make breakfast for her, but after he is done, he offers to feed her, which makes Yako blush. All the while, Yako's mother is in the laundry room, and she's fully aware that there's a dude with her daughter. When she decides to show herself, she finds Tonome in a weird position with Yako and starts explaining that she didn't mean to interrupt. Tonome is shocked to his bones because this isn't a good first impression, while Yako wishes the anime gods would take her life. The following week, Matter shows up at Tonome's office with an invisible client named Aya. Tonome is stunned to see her because their kind is rare, and Aya feels the same way. She introduces herself to Tonome and is excited that she's getting help from someone like her. Hearing them talk, Yako becomes jealous because Tonome is being too friendly with Aya, so Jirashi teases her for it. At Tonome's office, Aya reveals that she's being accused of theft at her job, as money was recently stolen. Since the camera captured nothing, her boss, who happens to be the vice president, claimed that an invisible person stole the money, so he accused Aya. Hearing this, Tonome asks about the president and learns that the dude is in the hospital, which means that the vice president is currently in charge of things. Aya says she didn't steal the money, but she's worried that she can't name an alibi because she's invisible. Despite that, Tonome assures her that he'll get to the bottom of the case, and she thanks him for it. The following day, Tonome and Matter meet with Gamake, the vice president, concerning Aya's case. Tonome asks for the security footage, and when he checks it, he notices that no one touched the safe after Gamake himself locked it. As Gamake begins blaming Aya for the missing cash, Tonome goes completely invisible to prove that his kind isn't intangible, and that the security camera would have captured the safe getting opened if Aya were really the thief. Seeing this, Gamake gets all sweaty and starts apologizing for accusing Aya. However, Matter pulls up footage showing that Gamake has been siphoning money ever since the president was admitted to the hospital. Seeing that he's been caught, Gamake starts sweating like a chicken, but he wets himself when the president shows up and is informed about his crimes. The following day, Aya thanks Tonome for helping her out. As she leaves, Tonome thanks his employees for helping out with the case. He then learns that Yako helped with everyone's schedule so they could focus on the case, so he personally thanks her for it. Feeling excited, he suggests a work trip, and Jirashi agrees, yelling that she would like to see the mountains. During the weekend, they all arrive at the mountains for the work trip and begin to set up their tents for the night. While they are at it, Tonome notices that Matter is quite fond of the mountains, but the dude claims he used to hate mountains and that it's thanks to Kikira that he now likes it there. A bit later, Tonome asks Yako to join him for a walk, and Yako agrees. On the way, Yako tells Tonome that she feels safe having him around, and Tonome feels the same way too. This makes Yako recall the scary experience Tonome had in the mountains when he was a youngster, but when she asks if he is cool with this trip, he claims he is over the trauma. After that, they sit at a bench, where Tonome brings up Yako's contribution to solving Aya's case. Yako thinks she didn't do much and says she only contributed because she saw how angry Tonome was with the whole thing. Hearing this, Tonome agrees that he was pissed about Aya's case, remarking that his kind usually gets treated with suspicion. He then pulls Yako closer and kisses her as a thank you for everything. Yako is flustered as this happens, but when Tonome stands to leave, she drags him so they can spend some time alone before heading back. That evening, Matter tells a story about why he used to hate the mountains. Several years ago, he and his mates were forced on a school trip in the mountains, and he hated it because he was overweight and couldn't keep up. When his mates left him behind, Kikira stuck around, and it made him feel relieved that someone was there for him. Over time, Matter got exhausted and decided to give up, but that was when Kikira showed up, gave him water, and offered to carry his bags. During lunch, Matter offered to eat with Kikira, but the dude refused because it felt weird. He argued that they weren't friends, but when Matter kept pushing, he was forced to agree. A few days passed, and the trip was over, so they had to go back to their academy. While on the bus, Matter woke up and found himself holding hands with a sleeping Kikira. He figured that Kikira would feel weird if he woke up, so he decided to pull his hand away. However, at the last second, he held Kikira's hand again, but was shocked to realize that Kikira was awake the whole time and thought the dude was too shy to talk. Since then, Matter started dating him. The following day, everyone prepares to fish at the lake, while Tonome waits for Yako to finish dressing up. At some point, Yako asks him for help with changing, and when he enters her tent, his sausage starts to cook. However, he sucks it up and helps Yako with her swimsuit, commenting that she looks cute in it. After she is done changing, she heads out with Tonome, and Jirashi remarks that she looks hot. After that, Yako joins Tonome at the lake, while Jirashi and the others try fishing with their bare hands. When it's Tonome's turn to fish, he fails to catch anything and ends up wetting his shirt. Seeing him, Jirashi realizes he is quite jacked, but as Yako hears this, she tells Tonome to take his shirt off. Tonome is skeptical about this because his shorts will be on display if he takes his shirt off, and it'll allow others to get an aerial view of what he's packing. Realizing it's embarrassing for him, Yako doesn't push any further, but she tells him she'd like to be the first person to uncover personal things about him. As Tonome hears this, he smiles and apologizes for being insensitive, but before he can kiss her again, Jirashi shows up and ruins everything. The following day, they all drive out of the mountains heading to the city, and Tonome is glad he got to be with Yako. He wishes he could get a solo trip with her but dials it down because it's too soon. The following week, Yako sits at work and giggles every 5 minutes, and her colleagues notice. They wonder what's up with her, but they don't know that she's creeped out about the kiss she shared with Tonome during their short trip. Yako keeps giggling because the kiss with Tonome was her first, and she hates that she hasn't had any bedroom experience. Later, after the day's work, Tonome decides to walk Yako home and suggests stopping by a bar to grab a drink. Yako agrees, but is a bit flustered because Tonome is relating to her as if their weekend kiss didn't happen. Tonome explains that it's not like that, and he only seems composed because he is trying his best not to feel shy. He then reminds her that he gets nervous around her, and it makes Yako's brain time out. When they arrive at the bar, the whole setting is new to Yako because she has never drunk outside her home. She asks about the purpose of bars, and Tonome explains that it's where people meet to spend time. Hearing this flusters Yako and makes her heart skip a beat, but she hates that everything Tonome is saying is making her floodgates twitch. As a result, she decides to sit beside Tonome to develop thick skin against his charm. She then opens up about her lack of experience in bedroom affairs and how she hates acting innocent around Tonome, but Tonome tells her not to worry about it. After they are done drinking, they take a ride home, but Yako is uncomfortable in the taxi because Tonome is quiet. Upon arriving at Tonome's building, she invites Tonome in for dinner, but Tonome refuses, making Yako feel bad. She thinks she did something wrong and sadly walks to her room to wet her pillows. However, Tonome notices her mood and hugs her to make her feel better, but the hug does more than that. 2 days later, it rains in the morning, and Tonome gets soaking wet while running to his office. When he arrives, Yako enters behind him and is wet from top to bottom, so Tonome acts like a gentleman and gives her his towel to make her feel warm. Meanwhile, he is shivering. A while later, he sets up the heater and gives Yako a blanket, but that's when Yako notices that he is wet and cold too. Feeling bad, she forces him to join her under the blanket. In this position, Yako notices that her skin is touching Tonome's, and it makes her start having funny ideas. When she mistakenly touches Tonome's cold fingers, she realizes they'll be of good use to her and casually mentions that it'll make her happy. Tonome gets the hint and preps her for a kiss, but that's when Jirashi barges into the office and ruins the mood. The following day, Yako's mom pesters her daughter about how she'd like to meet Tonome. Yako feels skeptical about the meetup, especially because of how she met Tonome last time, but she agrees anyway. That afternoon, Yako hosts her mother and Tonome at a restaurant, and the two get chatty. The woman apologizes to Tonome for ruining his thing with Yako, but Tonome brushes it off as no biggie and gives her a gift. Yako is paranoid because she doesn't know what to say, but she's shocked when she realizes that Tonome is getting familiar with her mother. After lunch, Tonome bids farewell to Yako's mother and walks away with Yako. Earlier, while Yako wasn't paying attention, her mother found out from Tonome that she was reliable at work, so she begged Tonome to look after her. A few days later, Tonome gives Yako a sweet-smelling flower and takes her to a love park. Yako likes the place because it smells amazing, and also because the place has sweet treats. As she tastes them, she lights up because they're delicious, while Tonome looks at her and finds her cute. The following day, Yako arrives at the office and is shocked when Karma suddenly charges at her to greet her. As a result, Yako right-hooks Karma to the floor, while Tonome shows up and scolds him for acting stupid. He then asks what he wants, so Karma reveals that his wife, Light, has gone out on a trip. He feels skeptical about it because Light packed most of her belongings, though he doesn't read much meaning into it. All of a sudden, Light calls and informs him that she's at her father's place, which leaves Karma shocked because he senses a divorce. While he cries his eyes out, Tonome advises him to go home and call his wife, but he refuses since he thinks that Tonome is trying to get rid of him. He yells that he'll do things to himself if left alone, so Yako advises Tonome to accommodate him at least until his brain resets. Hearing this, Karma pushes further and asks to spend the night with Tonome, promising to help out with house chores. The following morning, Tonome wakes up to Karma giving him rainbow vibes, so he politely avoids taking any offers from him. While he eats breakfast, he asks Karma if he's called his wife yet, but Karma says he hasn't because he is too scared of what she might say. Later, Karma heads to work with Tonome, and Yako notices Tonome's dull mood. When she asks what's up, Karma's cheeks turn red, and he reveals that he attended to Tonome's dearest needs all night. While everyone tries to understand what this means, Tonome tells Karma to shut up so that this anime channel will survive tomorrow, but the dude keeps running his mouth. A bit later, he offers to help Tonome with today's detective work, so they head out together to keep close tabs on a suspect. Tonome is supposed to follow the said dude, but the issue is that the guy can fly, and Tonome will lose him. As Karma hears about this, he uses his elven powers to curse the suspect's wings, which restrict him from flying. Tonome is shocked when he sees this, so Karma explains that he can curse people when his heart is in a dark place. Tonome understands this because Karma is sad about his situation with his wife, but he didn't expect it to be this bad. Feeling bad for him, Tonome offers to let Karma spend another night at his place, under the condition that Karma calls his wife. Later, at the office, Karma finally calls his wife, but after the call, he runs home without saying a word to Tonome. In his absence, Yako curiously asks if he doesn't like Karma, so he explains that his personality doesn't match Karma's. He also admits that he is jealous of how Karma can easily express his emotions, so Yako smiles and forces him to lie on her. While Yako touches his face, he becomes a bit uncomfortable and decides to return the favor, and the rest is history. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you watched up to this point, let's confuse the fake anime watchers by commenting, "Sweet plot." Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know if you want the next episode.